Okay guys, today we're going to try to do this a little differently. So instead of kind of doing a full episode recap, I'm going to stick to just kind of reviewing this episode. I'm going to talk about my favorite scenes, and I'm going to talk about the things that really kind of stuck out to me, and I'll even, kind of throw in a few of my theories of what I think might possibly be going to happen in the future. Sometimes I'll be wrong, sometimes I'll be right, and sometimes I'll just sound like a crazy lady who watches way too much television, which I am. Okay, so let's talk about this episode, and wow, was it a good one, you guys. And I can't even imagine, I keep hearing that next week's episode is going to be even more of a shocker. I just don't know if my heart can handle it, basically. So, one of the scenes at the beginning of the episode was Mellie going to see Cyrus, because of course, in last week's episode, Fitz told her that he wanted a divorce. So Mellie is freaking out, and Cyrus is like, look, calm down, I'll go and talk to him. So when Cyrus goes to see Fitz, I think Cyrus is kind of coming at the whole situation from a purely political place. It's his job to make sure that Fitz has great approval numbers, and he's there to kind of keep things moving. So he's there to tell Fitz, you can't do this. You can't divorce your 9-month pregnant wife and kick her out of the White House. What do you think people are going to think about that? And he's right. I mean, you get that. I mean, if he did that, his approval ratings would just, plummet. But I absolutely loved Fitz's response, because let's remember that Fitz just had a near-death experience, and you can't do something like that. You can't, go through something like that and not be changed. So Fitz tells him, look, when I was in the hospital and the doctors were yelling at me and I was just laying there, I realized that I don't have to be afraid anymore. And you get that Fitz has got this kind of renewed sense about life, that I don't have to be afraid anymore, there's nothing to lose, and I need to stop wasting time. I have wasted time, and I'm just not going to do that anymore. So let's talk about Cyrus for just a moment, because I feel like in this episode we definitely saw the killer side of Cyrus come out, literally. So at one point, Olivia comes to see him to explain, look, we've got a Hollis Doyle problem yet again. And she's just, of course, in the place where she can't take care of it. And so Hollis says, I'll deal with it. And immediately, that means he's going to have Hollis killed, because that's what Cyrus does. So we get to kind of see that darker side of him again. And not just that, I just felt like, his agenda is to get what Cyrus wants. He wants to make Fitz do what he wants, because that's what Cyrus wants. And for example, even with Olivia and Mellie, he really plays them off of each other. Sometimes you see him all chummy with Olivia and let's have some wine and talk about the men we love. But at the same time, you get that he'll sell Olivia out in a moment if it's going to get him what he wants. So I feel like we kind of saw that side of him quite a lot in this episode. And Miss Olivia, during this entire episode, the walls are crashing in on her. The name of this episode is Truth or Consequences, and I think that just explained her kind of storyline throughout this episode. I think she's finally reached the point where she knows that if she doesn't tell the truth, that she's going to lose herself. That she's going to lose the person that she thought she was if she doesn't come clean. And so this whole episode, you kind of see a side of her that we're not used to seeing. This is Olivia Pope. This is the woman who fixes things, and we're not used to seeing her in this kind of hesitant and weak state. There was a point where she climbed into bed and it looked like she didn't get out for days. She was just, it was a wrap. She was just out of it. While she's in bed too, there's that phone call from Fitz, that scene where he calls her. Immediately from her voice, he gets that there's something wrong. He's calling because he's got news for her. He wants to tell her that he's asked Mellie for a divorce. But as he's telling her that, she tells him, she kind of blurts out, Edison asked me to marry him. And she just kind of goes on this whole little tangent where she was like, I could marry him and I could go off somewhere and make jam. I thought that was hilarious when she said that. And be a normal person. I could get me some normal is what she said. And it was just heartbreaking, because towards the end of that scene, he's telling her look, I asked Mellie for a divorce. Will you wait for me? Tell me you'll wait for me. Say you'll wait for me. But she doesn't answer him. She just kind of hangs up the phone because she's, in the darkness, basically hiding under her covers because she doesn't want to kind of face what she's done. But it was sad. That was a sad scene. Now, one of my favorite scenes of this episode was when all the gladiators get together. You got Quinn and Abby and Huck and Harrison, and they realize that something's wrong with Olivia because stupid Edison showed up and did probably the only good thing he's ever done. Because he goes to see her when she's in bed and she tells him to get out. which was awesome. So, you know, Edison comes to them. It's just like, you guys are her family. You need to help her. And so you kind of get that Olivia becomes their client. And I loved that whole kind of twist, how they did that. Olivia is the client. How are we going to help her? So it's like, even though they all work together, Pope and Associates, and they are like a family, they all have secrets. And, you know, they all have things that they know that they keep to themselves. And so in that moment, to kind of help Olivia, they decide, okay, we're going to share our secrets. If each of us shares our secrets, maybe we can kind of piece together what the problem is. And as each of them starts to share their secrets and they start to put two and two together, they realize, you know, what happened. They realize that Hollis and Olivia, and they don't know who else, basically rigged the presidential election. So the best part of this scene is Huck standing over in the corner coughing. Like, whenever they would get something wrong, you would just hear this. The kind of crushing part about this scene, though, was when they realize, you know, like, when they get to the realization that Olivia was involved in rigging the presidential election. The looks on their faces were just so heartbreaking. It was like, you know, realizing that your hero is flawed. And if you think about it, they're all flawed. You know, like they've all come from different places, and Olivia has kind of brought them all together, and they are this kind of ragtag bunch of people who each have a past, who each have made mistakes. But I think they kind of viewed her as the ultimate white hat, and they kind of put her on a pedestal. And it's that moment when they realize that, wait, she's just like us. She's flawed like us. And so that moment was really sad, but also, like, I think it's going to make them stronger, you know, as a team. So that was one of my favorite scenes. So eventually Olivia does get out of bed. She goes to the office and she apologizes to her associates at Pope and Associates. And there's this great moment between her and Harrison as well. It was really quick, but it was just this moment where it's like he holds her hand and he tells her, like, you still wear the white hat. Like, you know, like, don't give up on that. You are still good. You still have good in you. And, you know, you get that they're all kind of on the road to redemption. And I love that. I love that storyline, and I hope it's something that they continue to play with. Now, the reason that Olivia gets out of bed is that Huck goes to see her, and I absolutely love their relationship too. Huck goes to say, look, if you want me to take care of Hollis, I'll do that. And then we got one of the best lines, no, the best line of the episode, when Olivia says to him, Huck, you have to stop killing people. I just thought that was just genius, because it's true. But through their conversation, she realizes what Cyrus is going to do. She realizes that Cyrus is going to kill Hollis, and that's what really kind of moves her into action. And at this point, then she just doesn't care. She's just like, look, we did it. We are guilty. If there's going to be consequences, let them come, but I'm going to, you know, kind of attack this head on. So the team gets together and decides that they're going to find the evidence to prove that Hollis paid Becky to try to kill the president. So they get to work, and you know, you have your kind of classic scandal montage, work montage, where you see everybody working hard, combined with like the 70s soul soundtrack, which, you know, it wouldn't be an episode of Scandal if we didn't have that moment. And in the end, Huck actually has to go see Becky in prison because they need her bank account information. And so he goes and he asks her for it and tells her, look, I want to get you a lawyer because I want to make sure that I can still come visit you. And at first you're thinking that he's just kind of scheming his way to get the bank account. But then you start to realize that he seems really genuine. You know, like, he tells her his name. Like, remember in the episode where she gets captured by the Secret Service, she tells Huck her real name, you know, like, and she asks him for her real name. And it's like this kind of connection between the two of them. Because, of course, they're like killer assassins. They don't tell anybody who they really are. And he does tell her, well, he writes it down on a piece of paper and, like, slides it over to her so she can see it. But you kind of get that he's being genuine, like he really does want to see her. And in another part of the scene, he tells her, like, you're the only person I feel like I can really be myself with. And I think that is so true. I really think that's true. So the big shocker of this episode is that when Huck gets back to the office with Becky's bank account information and they start tracking it, they realize that it wasn't Hollis that paid Becky to shoot Fitz. So now we're back to the big mystery of who shot Fitz. That's the mystery. So that's my question to you guys. When you're done watching this video, you make sure down in the comment section below to tell me who you think the guilty person is. Because from the looks of the previews for next week, we are going to find out who that person was. Now, there are some obvious suspects, so let's kind of look at those. I think Mellie is probably everyone's #1 suspect, so I'm going to be really surprised if she's the guilty party, just because she looks so guilty. I think it's going to be somebody that we're going to be surprised by. But Mellie is a suspect. I think Cyrus is a suspect as well. I don't think he maybe intended to kill Fitz, but to shoot him and make his approval numbers go up, that seems like something Cyrus would do to me. And also, let's talk about Berna for a second, because I wouldn't put it past her to do something like that. So I guess we'll see next week who the guilty party is. I'll tell you guys though, at that moment in the scene when they reveal that information, that Hollis is not the one that paid Becky, I like sat forward in my seat. Like I was sitting on the edge of my seat because I thought they were going to tell us who did it. But, you know, this is Scandal, so of course we are going to be tortured for a week while we wait to find out. So let's talk about Berna, too, for a second, right, you guys? Because I have this theory. Here we go, into the Poppy Theory Lounge. I'm not going to be surprised if Berna's not the one who tried to shoot the president, if she, like, kind of falls on her sword and takes the rap for all the voter fraud. I wouldn't put that past her, just because it's kind of like her life is already over, and I feel like there's a part of her, you know, that wants Olivia to get a second chance to kind of redeem herself. So let's talk about Mellie in this episode. There was a scene, you know, like between her and Cyrus, after her initial freak out of, you need to do something about this, Cyrus. There was a scene between the two of them where she just starts to rant about Fitz. And, you know, there was a part of you that, like, totally got where she was coming from. Like, I get it, Mellie. Like, you're the one who was there during the hard times, and now that times are good, somebody else is gonna come swoop in and, like, take your just rewards. It was just kind of like, yeah, it was a bit crazy, but you also kind of saw her side of things. But, of course, Mellie is not a normal woman, so when Cyrus tells her, like, look, I'm going to take care of Hollis, you need to deal with this divorce thing, and if you've got one last card to play, you need to play it. And so she does. So this woman has her doctor induce her labor early. So you see her going to labor, and Fitz shows up, and you get that now that she's had the baby, you know, it does make it harder for him to say he wants a divorce, because now it's not that he's just divorcing his pregnant wife. You know, you've got this image of the first lady with this baby, and the president saying, I want a divorce. That sounds like I want a divorce from you, but also from this kid. It definitely makes it harder for him to say, I want a divorce now that she's had the baby. So I think that was her kind of play. And I don't think we're done with Mellie yet. I think Mellie's going to be around for a while. You know, she's his wife, and I think she does not want to let him go. I loved this episode. Like I said, I cannot wait for next week. I am way too excited about that. Thanks so much, as always, you guys, for watching. Don't forget to comment and tell me who you think is the person who paid Becky to kill or try to kill Fitz, because I am interested to hear your opinions. And yeah, we can hash it out in the comment section down below. See you guys later. Bye.